so they understood.
Sure.
This is moving deeper value.
Sure, sure. See, I mean, let's talk about it honestly. I mean, let's say somebody's enrolling at $200 a month. They're continuing to pay $200 a month, and you've got great retention. You can run a profitable, successful program at that. What my conclusion has been over the years is that if you go through, let's use two different terms, upgrade and renewal. If you go through a complete renewal process, meaning you're teaching them how to set a goal, you're really anchoring in the goal, you're giving them a vision of something that's exciting and empowering, you're future pacing the parent into seeing my 12-year-old as a 16-year-old who's a black belt, who's immune from peer pressure and is not, you know, drinking and driving and is a student and they're a National Honor Society and so forth. If you do all that stuff, then you move away from how excited I tend to be on a class-by-class basis to I'm really focused on a longer-term empowering goal, both the child and the parent, right? Or the adult if it's an adult. And you can go back to all of the different speakers and so forth, and Zig's line, I believe it was, and it may have been Dennis Whaley, but is, you know, if you have a big enough goal, you know, small obstacles seem like pebbles on the beach. However, if you don't have a goal, they seem like boulders. And I think just in human nature, see, I don't go to Harvard to see if I'm really enthusiastic about the outcome of the first midterms, right? I go to Harvard to get my degree and then to become a lawyer or become a business person or whatever it is. And I think the first piece of it is really having the concept of renewal anchored in not as a contractual issue, not as a financial issue, but as a commitment to do this long term and to really attain a powerful goal, and then giving them a powerful enough goal that it pulls them through the obstacles that happen, because there's a lot of obstacles along the way, right? There's distractions. Grandma's in the hospital. We have 2 cars, one of them broke down and it's hard to get there, to Joey's a little bit bored this time, to he got punched in the nose and he's a little scared, and that's okay, we're not that committed anyway, we won't come back. I mean, there's all those different things that happen, right? And if you don't get really good at that, you end up with everybody in kind of a month-to-month mentality. If I enjoy it this month, I'll be here. If I don't enjoy it next month, I'm gone. If it snows, we won't blaze the snow to get, I mean, it's all those kind of negative consequences, right? And then the next piece of it is thinking about the financial. And if you go to private school, private preschool is at a different price than private elementary school, is a different price than private middle school, is a different price than private high school, is a different price from junior college, is a different price from Ivy League, right? And at each stage it escalates. And if you go to college, the per hour credit at the same college, so I went to the University of Denver to get the MBA, Georgetown to get the bachelor's, but a undergraduate credit hour is different from a master's credit hour, is different from a PhD credit hour in the tuition, and it escalates, okay? That's just kind of a universal phenomenon, right? And part of the reason in the academic environment it escalates is it takes a lot more expert time for a PhD candidate to interact with, and a lot narrower niche of capabilities than it does an undergraduate psychology class with 40 people in it or 100 people. And so the idea that the training on a per hour basis should be more as a brown belt or more as a black belt or more as a second degree black belt is congruent with almost all educational experiences anyway. That makes sense? So for this first standpoint of thinking in terms of an upgrade is a white belt class for 45 minutes more valuable than a black belt class that you're personally teaching and teaching them Joe Louis fighting systems? Well, this one is probably more valuable really by a factor of 3 or 4. Fair enough, right? So you've got to get over that hurdle, but you've got to explain it in such a way that it fits with that model, right? And then it's deciding. So if the program looks like this, and I enroll for a year, and then option 2 is I'm committed to black belt, and then option 3 is I'm committed to leadership. And let's say for the point of speaking, all of them are 36 to 48 months and take you to first degree black belt. Then it's the, okay, we're going to get rid of this. That's what we're talking about now. And I enroll for 12 months, and then I make a decision if I'm going to train to black belt or not. That piece, what it does is it puts pressure on you more so than them. It puts pressure on you to make sure the staff doesn't miss the fact they have to go through that renewal process and help them set the goal and really commit to the goal and really do everything. Because, again, it comes back to like Covey's time management quadrants. Urgent and important, not urgent and important. The renewal process, if you're not careful, becomes not urgent. And then it doesn't happen. Then they die on the vine, right? But this forces it to become urgent, right? And so, there's more logic to it than that, but if you just started with that, and then there's the rationale of, should I be able to commit to black belt or commit to black belt and plus it, right? Well, again, the first part of the price differential is a white belt class more or less valuable than an assistant instructor training class at brown belt? And are they at this level more likely to be coming more hours a week, and are the classes longer and all that stuff anyway, right? So whether it's on a per hour basis or the value of the class, the credit hour, this is all more valuable than this, right? Then the next step is if I can plus it so that there is an enhanced curriculum that goes above and beyond what this is, should that be more valuable if they choose to? And is it okay to have you choose this or you choose this and this is more valuable? Of course. I mean, there's no reason in the world why there shouldn't be that. And there's academic examples of that. I mean, the private school my kids were at last year, I mean, they have an additional parallel track with a tutoring program of I don't remember how long it was, but 2 or 3 hours a week in addition, and it was $150 an hour, and the grumbling behind the scenes is, well, if the school's so damn good, why do they have all these kids in tutoring? Well, they have all those kids in tutoring because it's layers on and is an enhancement. And no matter how good the teachers are, there's still some that are differentially struggling, so it was a benefit. And you can cynically look at it like tuition's $30,000 a year. You're telling me it's an extra $450 a week to be in this thing, so $900, so whatever that, $1,800 a month. But that's just fine. And an awful lot of the parents were paying for it. Also, an awful lot of parents, why does Mathnasium, Sylvan, Kumon, and Huntington exist, right? Why does Sylvan, Huntington, Kumon, and Mathnasium, among others, exist? Because in private or public school, they're already paying for, directly or indirectly, the tuition, but now they want supplemental or accelerated, or they want additional SAT prep or whatever, and they're willing to pay, if you've ever priced them out, a lot to get that supplemental training. Does that make sense? So the logic here, in my mind, is predominantly this. If I allow most of the students to make month-to-month or incremental decisions, then I've lost the pressure on me to force them to go through a process that's valuable for them, to really set the goal and and to renew their goals and really set their mission and become truly bought in, right? From a psychological principle, it's once they go through that process and you get them to the other side and they're committed, they now convince themselves that they're really committed. I mean, the point at which they make the decision and they sign the paper and they commit to everybody is why I like things like the colored tops. I walk out there in the blue top, I'm telling the world, I'm going to get to black belt, I'm not going to drop out, right? I mean, and that's always been the way it worked, is suddenly they've told everybody, and we would always say it like, okay, now you have your blue top, what you've done is given everybody, and especially the instructors, permission to hold your feet to the fire, that you actually get your black belt, and we're going to do everything we can to hold your feet to the fire, and we're not going to let you, slough off that commitment. See, that's not a contractual conversation. That's right, you made a commitment to yourself, and it's a public commitment. There was a recent article, study, about goals attainment, and it said exactly that. Somebody who has a written goal is something like, I don't know, 100% more likely to achieve it than somebody who doesn't, but somebody who has made a public commitment with a written goal is something like 400% more likely to achieve it, right? So that's now the public written goal, right? And so the whole logic is not about you have to renew in order to financially commit to us, but it's all about, look, human nature is, if you don't make a public commitment and you don't really make a commitment to yourself and you don't really do a written, in writing, then you're very unlikely to get there. And, our stats for years showed once they committed to black belt, whether it was black belt club or leadership or any iteration, they got there. And if they didn't, they all dropped out. Not all. There was the occasional, right? So, when we did, you can read new for a year or you can keep doing this. There was the occasional one that really got there. But, in ratio terms, dropout rate over there was 15%, dropout rate over here was like 1%, right? So, but that's human nature in anything you do, right? And I've heard the argument that, well, you use the example of academics and colleges, but they don't really make you commit for 4 years. But it's already built in the system. If you go to a selective university, the interview process, everything else, is all designed to weed out the ones who aren't there for a degree. Because the ones who are just hanging out on mom and dad's money, they're going to end up flushed out pretty quickly anyway, right? And I'm not sure that answers the question. It's probably a longer answer than you're looking for. But the differential here to here is about, can you create a value add that's enough that they truly see the enhanced value? And this thing is about, if you don't really make them go through a process of setting the goal and committing to the goal, then they're very unlikely to get it because there's a lot of obstacles along the way. So we want that pebble on the beach, not the boulder, a reaction emotionally. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
It all makes perfect sense to me. I'm just, that was some of the other things you probably have not done a good enough job of selling it at this point. Again, just because I've run a very linear
Sure.
system for so long, I'm getting, and I have 40% of my student base has probably been with me for 8 years plus.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm at just,
Well, let's talk about the transition, though. The transition is keep doing everything you've always done with that 40%. And don't try to get them bought into this. Don't even try to have the conversation. Well, they don't have to understand, they don't have to buy into it, right? If you're going to do something like the blue top or something like that, just go buy a bunch of damn tops from Century and give them all and say the new school uniform is this, right? Yeah, who cares, right?
That will help support what you're doing because they're wearing them.
Yeah. When we did this with Jeff Smith's school, and I'm going to butcher this because I don't remember exactly how he did it, but it was basically 3rd degrees and up. He went and bought him a top and said, this is the new thing, right? And it was the blue top thing because before he was doing, I don't know, red or black or something. So like the 3rd degrees and up, he bought a bunch of tops and said, here's a new top, congratulations, here's the deal. Well, can't I wear my black top because I really like it? No, it's blue now, right? Now, he didn't tell everybody else that that was free. He just got them, you know, yeah, got them wearing the thing, right? And the black belts always want to wear what the staff is wearing, right? And the kids always want to wear what the staff and the black belts are wearing. And then all the second degrees, he said, we have this new program, it's called Leadership. It's a $10,000 program for $500, we'll put you into it. And that includes your blue top. I mean, so he did something like that, right? And then the next step down, it was something else, but it was a, you know, kind of rounding error. But now all of a sudden all the students are seeing all the black belts in this new thing going, wow, I want to be that, right? So the 8-year plus guys just go buy a couple boxes and, you know, yeah. Yeah. It's just social proof, but you're not gonna get them to do anything new anyway.
I literally asked that question. How do I get my brown belts?
You're not. You're not. You screwed them up. It's undoable. Just give up. Okay, but yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
The other question I have on that, so I sign somebody up, they do a down payment.
Mm-hmm.
In 2 months, I'm upgrading them to another program,
Right.
which has another down payment.
Yeah, absolutely.
What am I doing with that first down payment?
Depositing in the bank, paying the bills, putting it in the savings account.
And again, my down payment is not that high right now, but if they put $349 down, and then they're paying $139 a month, you know, for the 2 months. And now
You know.
I'm upgrading your program, and I'm asking them now for whatever, $500-600 down, and X a month. And then
Don't-
mine said down payment, the first down payment was for 12 months, because they're, again, trying to get away from the objection of, absolutely, I'd love to talk about that upgrade as soon as, you know, when I'm up with my 12-month program I just paid for.
Yeah, they don't really think that way unless you set them up to think that way, truth be told. Here's my anchor for that version is, and if we had Master Clark and Master Smith in the room with us, they would both argue the opposite point. But my personal emotional reaction is I just took cash for a year, and now I'm going to ask them cash to black belt. And I've always felt that, and I think I'm wrong, but I mean, I'm just not going to fix me at this point, right? I've always felt that it gets in the way of, in 2 months later, getting them to do the new deal, because in their mind, they've got it to the end, right? And again, some very smart people would argue the opposite, and they're probably right, okay? But that was the next thing I was going to say, but go ahead.
Yeah, once you get the yes, right, because finance is always the best result, right? Once you get the yes, you know the body. You say, okay, well, wait, Mr. Jones, you already prepaid for your orientation enrollment. You just paid $27.97. Now the tuition for leadership is $14,997. I'm going to credit $12.97.
Exactly.
So you just build it into the tuition.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Either way you want to do it.
Yeah.
That solution works both directions.
Yeah.
The guy who prepaid or the guy who just made a down payment.
Yeah.
And I always say it before they have a chance to ask the question.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You
Right.
don't want them to get to that mental point where they say, well, what the fuck, I just...
Yeah, yeah, yeah. 7.
So that's what you're saying, is you do. You'll take their down payment, and once they've committed...
You know, what are you charging down for a new enrollment?
For somebody coming in fresh?
Yeah.
$299 down and $139 a month for 11 months.
Yeah. I bet it's going to come up once every 25 conferences. Okay. It's a pretty low number. What I would add to what he just said, though, and now if they had paid cash for a year, it would come up more frequently. Right, okay. And I would always do what he did, right? So if they had prepaid, I would say you've already paid, you know, $2,900. We apply that to the, you know, the additional tuition. Actually, our language is that was, you know, this tuition is here to here, right? So you're not losing anything. It's automatically applied to that. But I would always address it so it doesn't become, because the problem is something like that can become the subliminal objection or the unstated objection, and then they can have hesitance with moving forward, but they're afraid to like say it sometimes.
It's
right?
It speaks to trust.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the unspoken trust. Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, the other thing I was going to say, though, is that you've got you can do anything in the world you want with the next new student in the door because they don't know any better and they haven't been pre-framed by you the other way, right? And when you're doing your enrollments, it's vital that you're setting them up to think about explaining, educating them to think about the program the way it really is, right? And if you're telling them that it's a 9-month green belt course or it's a 12-month purple belt course, that's setting them up for failure anyway. Because we don't want them to drop out at green belt, and if they drop out at green belt, their life-changing benefits disappeared in about 24 hours, right? So we want them to train to black belt. So when we're enrolling them, that's the conversation. The program takes you to first degree black belt in, let's say, 4 years. And then obviously people continue to train to second and third degree black belt. And what we're doing right now is enroll you just in a trial enrollment for about a quarter of that to begin with, just so we can qualify and make sure we feel comfortable with allowing you to train to black belt. Okay? And the trial enrollment is the 2 whatever, right? And then I've got the tuition. Before I'm done, I want to go back and say now, the trial period to determine whether we're going to train to black belt or not is your first 16 classes. And so over the first 16 classes, we're going to be looking at, evaluating, and deciding whether we feel comfortable recommending you to train to black belt or not and accepting you at that level. And if we do, then we'll approve you to do that, and we'll go ahead and approve you to go on to that next level, right? So I'm not letting them leave the office thinking that this is the ultimate outcome, okay? Yeah, I want them to be thinking in terms of this is where I want to be. I'm hoping they'll let me do it, right? And again, it's just like you want to get into Harvard and you're going and talking with a guidance counselor, right? That's a very unilateral conversation. It's like a job interview usually, right? You're kind of at the point of you're almost begging, right? You're trying to impress and cajole and so forth that, let them in. You want it to be that way with them wanting to be part of this cool stuff. Does that make sense?
The thing, I think I'd add to that, it's probably, you guys have been around for a long time, so probably none of this, all of this stuff in this conversation, this discussion that we have, a lot of times sounds technique-y, right? But none of it comes across that, none of it can ever come across that way, you know what I'm saying? And those kind of questions, Tim, is really what we need to drill down into, because all of this stuff, if you look at it from like a top-down perspective, and just from an operational perspective, doing it all the time, none of it, all of it passes the ethics test, all of it passes the smell test. And if you feel like it doesn't, you gotta ask that question. You know what I'm saying? You did, right? You gotta ask that question because that's a mechanical solution to that problem, right? You will never have an objection that you can't logically overcome, emotionally overcome, but logically, it totally makes logical sense. When we do the price presentation for leadership, once you get the yes, we do the numbers, and we say, yeah, you already do the math. Now that never happens. You know what I'm saying? So those are the kind of things, like if anybody has any discomfort asking that kind of question, don't. You know what I mean? Because there's no, I think in some cases what happens is we have this sort of emotional belief that lives in the back of our psyche that says, well, I get it, but there's this and this and this, and it's kind of bullshit, but let's try and see what happens, right? There shouldn't be those this. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We can solve those this and this and this. There's a good solution,
Yeah. Yeah, it's got to be 100% congruent and 100% ethical.
Yeah.
You're talking about a 36-month program, and then you just said, 48 months to get to black belt. How do you?
It was a mistake. That was a mistake. It's one.
Yeah. Well, probably every school in the room has a little different, right? They've created one black belt in 386 different years who sits on the top of a mountain somewhere in Israel. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Who sits on the one, on the one mountain, the Golan Heights, and overlooks the troubled lands. Yeah, exactly. So, how long on average do you tell people it takes to get to black belt?
It's about 4 years.
Okay, so over the years we've vacillated because we were originally doing a 36-month black belt program, found most people were actually taking a little bit longer, and then we were doing a 48-month black belt program and found that a lot of people were taking a little less. And I ended up adopting the language of it tends to take 36 to 48 months to get to black belt. The black belt program is 48 months, right? The old June-Ree system it was 36 months, but then there's a charge if you go over 36 months. I'd much prefer, we're not going to worry about that anymore. So we'll enroll them for 48 months, and nobody ever wants to not get their black belt quicker if they can, right? So I'll say it's going to take 36 to 48 months. The actual black belt program is 48 months. That gives you a little leeway, and they'll say, well, what if I don't get there in 48 months? Well, you're enrolled to first degree black belt. That's fine. And then we're not getting into it's now 49 months that I'm charging or 50 months. And it's also why I don't like test fees. I don't like I have a financial incentive to fail you, so you'll pay your test fee again, right? I don't like any of those dynamics. And if they are paying, I want it to be okay. You paid for it. In our case, we do test fees at black belts, but it's to participate in the event. It's not to get your rank, right? So they'll pay a fee to participate in the black belt retreat, but they're not paying a fee for the belt, right?
The not right way to say it, but maybe the right way to think about it, are those mental ways like this. It's 48 months for pushing you out there, whichever one comes last. You're paying for the program, not the time, not the piece of program.
From there on,
You never say it that way, but that's.
Well, I think about it as if I've got them enrolled first degree black belt, it's going to get them to first degree black belt. And if it takes them 72 months, fine, right?
I've had a couple of cases where I've had to have a weird conversation about that.
Yeah, one in a 200 will try to game the system.
One family out of 1,000.
Yeah. So, but you don't make a policy. Yeah. It's so rare. It's not worth dealing with. But
I'm telling you, there was one, 1,000 families, one of them.
exactly.
If the leadership program gets them to black belt, what about beyond?
Well, see, in actual terms, what we're doing on the franchise schools is that leadership takes them to second degree black belt. So we're renewing them to second degree black belt. And then some of the schools, if their testicles haven't fully descended, will be doing we're doing master club, but black belt will be to first degree black belt, and then leadership will be a second degree black belt, so they have a time commitment fallback as well, right? But if you're more comfortable doing it to first degree black belt, and some people do have legitimate legal constraints on, how much you can commit for one thing or another. And again, I'm really thinking of all this as less of it's because I want a contractual commitment, because the piece of paper isn't worth the cost of the paper and ink if they're not still coming to class and still not committed, right? I mean, we're never going to take anybody to court, and we're not going to try to, levy their wages or any of that kind of stuff. What I was saying is, if you have it set up which is the way most will, if you have it set up where it's a 12-month enrollment, then it's a renewal to first degree black belt. It now necessitates, back here, you've got to make sure you're renewing them to second degree black belt, right? And then second degree black belt, back here, you've got to be renewing them to third degree black belt, right? And again, my discovery years ago with 6 that I owned outright with staff is once I got them to go through the goal setting and everything to renew their commitment, it was just as easy for us to get them to commit to second degree black belt as it was to first degree black belt, and it removed all the headaches of trying to get them renewed before they get their black belt, right? And it was in part,
We fell out of trouble. Say that again, because that's part of Tim's issue. He knows that
right,
part of it is you got to get to them way before
yes.
whatever psychological information you have.
Yeah, you don't wait till, congratulations, here's the belt, here's the diploma. Now, do you want to keep going? Oh, no, we're off to, right? And it may be worth the additional discussion, but the June Rhee situation years ago was pretty much everybody got their black belt and dropped out. And it was set up, if you're in black belt club, once you're a black belt, you train free. Okay? And one of the early, like, I'll say semi-confrontational conversations that he and Jeff Smith had was Jeff Smith was saying, well, we should be renewing them to second degree black belt and having them pay for second degree black belt. And Master Rhee's reaction, which is understandable but was wrong, was if they're not training and it's free, how can we get them to pay for what they seem not to want? But I'll tell you in practical terms, I mean, it was a big organization. So 2,500, 3,000 students, 70 black belts being promoted twice a year. I mean, it was you know, it was a big organization. Is in practical terms, the black belts weren't paying, and therefore the staff weren't all that incentivized to do anything, and there wasn't like regular black belt training and so forth. There wasn't even a regular black belt curriculum. So it was kind of like, you know, I'm going to learn one form and in 3 years I test again, right? So having recognized that problem, I was always trying to solve the how do I get my first degree black belt to second degree, how do I get my second degree to third degree. And the first part of it is we developed a really good stump speech that I could think about if I prepped on how to get them committed to the second level 9 or 12 months before they got their black belt. But then the next thing is they had to still be testing, because here I was testing them every 3 months or so, and now I don't want it to be 3 years until they test. So that was the black belt gold stripe, black belt orange stripe, black belt, right? And originally I made a mistake with it, to tell you the truth, is I put the solid belt in the wrong place, because now they felt like we had taken away something they had earned. So it became a black belt with a white stripe, and then a solid black belt, and then a black belt gold stripe, orange stripe, green stripe, right? To second degree, and then the problem then became how do we keep the second degrees to get to third degree, and then it became 2 white stripes, 2 gold stripes, 2 orange stripes, and so forth. And ATA has done all this stuff much better than anybody I've ever seen. And then it was the discovery that we could just renew them to second degree and not have to go through this rigmarole, right? And then you can renew them here to third degree and not go through this rigmarole. And truthfully, I mean, you are always going to end up with this funnel that looks like this. So it's rare to have enough quantity up in this area that you stay in sync and you're really, really focusing on that. But does that all make sense? So, no, we're using the intermediate rank stripes from first to second, the stripes on the second degrees, but then we're not doing as much from third to fourth degree, right? But you know, within the franchise, we have a thorough curriculum to fifth. I mean, ATA has a thorough curriculum to what, ninth or something? Yeah. But we have a thorough curriculum to fifth degree that, you know, just rotates. So there's stuff for them to keep learning. And above here, they keep progress checking every 4 months now, right? So
when you upgraded them, did they change programs? Did they go from some leadership program to another program? Or was it still called the leadership program? Was there an increase in fees?
truthfully, we've always had this in leadership program, and it is proportionately about the same, right? You can make a solid argument that you can have yet another level up, and that you should have another level up, and it should have another price point. Frankly, I've always spend so much time focusing here that we've never really focused on doing that, to tell you the truth, other than the vast majority of the focus was on how to improve ongoing testing, participation, and retention.
So you're not
Right.
charging more to go to third division, to go to second?
It's incrementally more. It's incrementally more, but it's not like, you know, it's not like going from $397 a month to $597 a month, and you could do something like that. There is a point, truthfully, that a lot of the longer term retention is about it's more social than it is developmental for them. Is that a fair thing to say, Toby? So they're anchored into all their friends are there. They're anchored into having been there, and it's important to the greatest extent you can, which again is what ATA has done so well. I mean, they have the regional, local, national tournaments, and they have, you know, all the different levels of that, and the different rank of instructor certification. And it's a big enough organization that they have enough critical mass on all those things that they can put that in place. I would say it's more difficult to replicate that model in a single or a double school. And historically, we had a lot of those things in place, but honestly, it kind of petered out around third degree. But then the numbers you tend to have, you know, across their organization, they have hundreds of them.
They put that stuff in place before they had the problem.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like, they started to use the regional system, when they just started to have, you know, more than just a couple of, you know, masters, you know?
Mm-hmm.
They got, and I wasn't there at the time, you know, when they got to like 8 or 10 masters, they were like, okay, well, we better chunk the country up. You know what I mean? They were ahead of the curve, so they always continued to kind of build like a career path for these guys, that, by the way, was completely part of their organization,
Mhm.
you know? So, yeah, there's a lot of, I've had the opportunity to look behind the scenes on a good number of large organizations like that. And they, under Hank Wade, really had their shit together, way ahead of the rest of the universe.
Should we consider that 8, or is that not?
They really did. But, you know, a lot of them to extent, you know,
Mhm,
but they
mhm.
really were ahead of the curve on almost everything. Which, by
Yeah.
the way, this whole thing, you know how I was describing the day how they had instructor separate from rank?
Yeah.
They also have, you know, their quote mastership requirements separate from rank.
Mm-hmm.
So in their system, you have to be a 6th-degree black belt, but just because you're a 6th-degree black belt doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
They have a separate set of requirements and all this other, you know. So
Right.
It's interesting how they did that.
Right, right. But is this all making sense?
Yes.
Right? And does that fully answer your question, Tim? Yeah.
I think it does.
Yeah, you're right about,
You can just look right over the thing and,
when we wandered out before, the security lines weren't bad.
yeah, no, not at all.
Yeah, yeah.
So there still is a path to black belt, even for those who don't commit to black belt or leadership. I mean, it just may take longer, and it may be a lot fewer percentage-wise. But, you know, if I have a guy that comes in and says, you know, between work and family obligations, I've managed to, you know, wrestle 2 hours out of my week, and then I sleep for 1 hour, and then I work with the kids to bed. He's not going to be able to.
Well, that was my question or point, and then based on this theory, no.
Yeah, I'd prefer not. I'd prefer not. In my hypothesis is this: if they're not really committed to be there long term, is the likelihood of them being there even at the end of the first year isn't that high, right? And if you just run the numbers, you know, most pretty good schools are running 5% dropout rate, so that's 60% at the end of the first year, and the 40% that are still there at the end of the first year pretty much are, you know, minus rounding error, all the ones that are committed to, you know, to be there long term, right? So if you just take that as the simple numbers, then the ones that say, well, at the end of the first year we'll decide about the second year, at the end of the second year we'll decide about the third year, well, they're the ones that very rarely are at the end of the first year anyway. Now, if you talk about in terms of conditions versus objections, there are people who have legitimate reasons why they don't feel comfortable in a longer contractual financial relationship. And now the question is, what's the reason why? I'm not too sure about my career stability, and if I, in the recession you had a lot of this, right? I'm not sure my company just riffed, 2,000 people, and the next round it could be me, and I don't want to be committed for anything that I may not be able to do and have it, have to default or whatever. Well, you can address that. I mean, that's if you get to that point, that's it's a legitimate condition that could happen to them. The other is, I know for a fact that I'm moving from Washington, D.C. to New Delhi in 24 months. And that you can just address, right? And I mean, in our standard contracts, if you move more than a certain radius around the school, it's automatically canceled anyway. So you can address it with that. If you get injured and can't continue to train, it's automatically canceled anyway. I've always been happy to write in if you lose your job and you're unemployed for more than 90 days, we'll cancel the agreement. And frankly, if you lose your job and are unemployed for more than like 24 hours, we'll put the payments on hold. So I'm happy to put that in writing to make them more comfortable. And the reality is we would do that anyway, right? So if you get to something that as a reasonable person you would be unwilling to make a financial commitment knowing that this might happen, then you just address it for them, right?
Two things.
Yeah.
So if you do find a condition that's unsolvable, I mean, obviously you address it, but I mean, this is sales 101, and I'm sure you know that. Remember, never to address it until you confirm that it's the final condition, right? So you never solve it until you know it's the only thing you have to solve moving forward. So you guys know that, right? The script is basically just, okay.
Yeah, because the smoke clouds keep billowing if you're not careful. Yeah.
So if I'm hearing you right, you're concerned that you might move to New Delhi in 24 months. Let me ask you a question. If I could solve that for you, would you then be, would that be the last thing?
Yeah.
Would that be where you won't? Well, yeah. Okay. Well, here's what I do. Then you got it, right?
Yeah.
But make sure it's the last condition. And then,
So you're not solving that one, then another one.
well, then you have another.
Well, if you're not careful, you're not solving what the real problem is, right? There's something in their mind that's holding them back, and now they're saying, well, what if? And you're going down that rat hole, and what if? And you're going down that rat hole, and what really it is, and sometimes what it really is I don't have enough belief in myself. You've got to reassure me that I can do it. Yeah.
They're so honored that, well, I don't know if we can handle this.
Yeah, I don't have enough belief in myself, or I don't have enough belief in him, and you've got to solve that, but they don't want to say that. So now they what if you to death, and you keep going down rat holes, and every time you go down a rat hole it gets you further from solving the real problem is, I don't know if I could do that or not because I have this thing, and I don't know if, and those guys, I mean, they're just incredible, and I don't know if I could be, right? I mean, there's usually...
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah, but you probably didn't hear it 5-1.
No.
Right?
And then it wasn't an objection. It was they were the parent looking at the child. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah.
Actually, it was all good. I just sat back and shut the heck up like you told me last
Yeah.
And they talked each other into it, but
Yeah.
ooh, I didn't think about that.
Yeah. And Tim, if nothing else, you went from 139 to 179, you'd make more money.
But it's funny, and I used to do a month-to-month thing.
Yeah.
I had a lot of people on for a long time, and that was at 179, 189. But I've come off month-to-month right now.
Yeah, but lower the price?
Well,
We talked through this,
Yeah.
we talked through this last night, and you mentioned it earlier. I think there's a lot of strategy there, but it's, okay, so we offer accelerated payments, right? So you do the presentation, you get the yes, and then you say, okay, well, here's the monthly version, you get the yes monthly, and you go, by the way, I can say, here's a way to save this money, and then you accelerate it. So you do a 12-month deal, but you
Correlate, yeah.
Yeah, I just thought, okay. But then by the end of the year, we were having a conversation about something. And my partner and I, we took all the contracts out of the break and we started looking at them. And I had like 60% of the students on accelerated payments. And see, I thought it was a price problem. I thought it was the market couldn't handle 250, right?
Well, if I remember correctly, there was like a Y or something in the same shopping center that had a martial arts program that was like 1/4 of what you were charging.
Yeah, well, they were charging $39 a month.
Right.
So
In the same shopping center, like 3 doors down.
Yeah, so I had that in my head for
Yeah.
a long time, but whatever. So we're looking through the contracts, and I had like 60% of the people on accelerated payments. So we had like a lot of families that were paying $400 a month for 1 gig, or $239, $259. And I'm like, what the hell? So then we just made it, whatever the lower version of it was, 197 or whatever. It was wrong. It didn't quite change the loading ratio much at all, right? So it might be a thing that you can do to kind of go to the conference a little bit is start offering accelerated, see how good you can get at that.
Right.
See how good you can get at it, and you can get good at it.
Mhm.
Now, the only premise that you're changing is just that, now it's for the whole time. But the real premise that you're changing is you're believing what the market will bear. And
Yeah.
it took me to like look at the paper.
Well, keep in mind my logic of pricing for like Just Smith schools and the others is what was happening with our upgrade system. Well, I was thinking that if we have a program at $397 and one at $247, we're going to get about 50-50, right? So we're going to get about half of them in the higher program, and the others we're going to price out of the market, and now they're going to do the lower program. But what we were getting was like 90-95% 10. So you go into any one of the schools, and everybody's wearing blue tops, and hardly anybody's wearing black tops. Well, if it's true that we're getting 90-95% 10, then why isn't this thing $497 and this other thing is $347 or $397? Because obviously we're not pricing, the difference between those two isn't pricing many of them out of the market. And my hypothesis, and I'm still trying to get it to happen, it's a problem with individual owner operators. The problem with staff is you can force it to happen and then they sabotage it. And the problem with individual owner operators, you got to beg, plead, and cajole because, on one hand you have apathy, on the other hand you have anarchy, right? So you're trying to get them to have enough belief in themselves to do it. But that was my whole logic is that when he was dealing with that, the comment I made to him, and it was Miko about the same time, is, well, all that really matters is what they're paying monthly. They're not thinking in their head, I'm paying $4,000. They're thinking in their head, I'm paying $397 a month or whatever it is.
They do get that little goose that they
Yeah.
feel like, I only made 4 payments and I'm done.
Yeah.
They do get that little bit, and that's not that hard to overcome
Mhm.
until later on. But it's
Wasn't
definitely
there typically like a slight discount by making accelerated payments?
Mhm.
they feel like they got a little goose.
Well, but I mean, is there really a discount?
Yeah, it's just a.
It's just, it's just the presentation, right? I mean, so, yeah, it's the premise. I mean, it's like in the Wall Street Journal, it was, retailers' real price is the Black Friday price, and they inflate the prices so that they can discount them in Christmas, but they do 40 or 50% of their sales over Christmas anyway, so that's the real price, and right? It's the JCPenney, right? The guy from Apple came in and tried to eliminate all that stuff, and it was a disaster. And the number from JC, what was this, like 60%? Like 60% of JCPenney's sales before he came in was the sale, right? I mean, that's a huge number. It means nobody ever walks in and just like buys stuff off the rack. It's got to be, this is the sale thing, so I'm buying all the sale stuff, which means the real price is the sales price. And the other price is just so that they can say it was discounted, right? And it's the same thing with us. I mean, what's the normal price? Well, the normal price for the renewal is $12,875 a month. If you do it right now, it's only $397 a month. If you wait, if you wait beyond that time, it's $447 a month. And if you wait beyond this point, it's $12,000, right? I mean, and I used to have a price presentation sheet that was exactly like that. I mean, it was if you wait till the end of 12 months, it's like $10,000 more, right? Well, nobody ever waits till the end of 12 months. They either dropped out or they renewed back then, right? But then you could show a massive savings, right? And we may have had, I mean, 1 out of 1,000 actually had done this, right? But then you could show massive saving from here to here and massive saving from here to here, and you really had leverage, right? Because then they say, well, can't I just wait till the end of the year and do it? Sure, it's this much, you know? And then,
Glad you went over that. I like it.
yeah,
I would have missed that.
yeah,
You don't want to try to zap that last piece of language.
yeah. Well, and if you haven't gotten to them in time, you know, the presentation is always, I apologize, it's my fault. We didn't get around to, you know, finalizing. I'm happy to go ahead and offer that if we want to go ahead and finalize it now, because it's my fault we didn't get around to, right? So that's a way of kind of taking the sting out of it. Just went like this, but, you know, going back and doing something that's more reasonable. Does that help? Okay. Other, I mean, this has been productive. Other questions or thoughts about that? See, so much of this is just getting in your mind where you have a congruent philosophy about how this stuff works, and then getting the staff framed in the right way so they get it. And you know, as Toby was saying, you know, the brown and black belts, you know, trying to reframe them, that's a whole different way things are working. I mean, just give up on that. Just don't let them talk to the white belts, right? Yeah.
You glossed over it a little bit.
Yeah.
You do talk to them. You don't just hand them the top and say, oh, we talk to them.
No, all the bells and whistles, and here's the new thing. Yeah. Yeah.
And since you guys have been working for so long,
Mm-hmm.
in fact, I'm going to subsidize your tuition, and I'm going to
Right.
believe it so much, I'm going to pay for it for you.
Yeah.
Now, don't tell lower ranks, but
Yeah.
you mean so much to me that I mean, that's the pitch.
Yeah, this is an $8,000 enhancement to the program, and when we introduced it, what I was saying to them all, which had the benefit of being true, is this is now curriculum that we used to work with the 3rd to 5th degree black belts, and now we figured out a way to chunk it in such a way that we can implement it as low as gold and orange belt. And what we're going to do with you guys is you're going to get it 4 years earlier than you would have gotten otherwise, right? And I mean, it was true. I mean, this was all stuff that we were doing with staff, but we weren't really doing it with students. So, you know, since this is now, you know, 3rd, 4th, 5th degree curriculum, we're going to just chunk it in such a way that we've gotten good enough and researched it enough that we can teach at the lower levels. And at the black belt level now, we're going to have to get you caught up, because we don't want the green belts to know more of this content than you do, nor do we want to make you wait, but be accelerating them. I mean, you can have all that kind of language, right? Which is all benefit statements for them. But again, I mean, it was true. You know, we were always doing that kind of leadership stuff with the higher level people. We just pulled it down and chunked it here and chunked it differently. But then, I mean, it's perceived as huge value added. You know, it's like saying this is normally what you would do in graduate school, but we've now figured out how to do it at high school, right?
One of the questions, it seemed to me like what Jeff Smith was doing was like if you do this first upgrade by yellow belt versus by something else.
Yes, yes.
So would there be like, if we start off with a blitz, there's this one bigger discount, then by your next belt exam, there's another discount, or how would we do that?
Well, you've got to be careful in the presentation, because you don't want to take it away and now give them an excuse for waiting, right? And in practical terms, let's talk about two sides. You know, our tuition price sheet would be something in the range of, you know, and I haven't personally done one of these for a little while, but let's say it's $347 a month if they do it at white belt. And the savings we're going to be presenting is the savings as compared to end of the year, right? And then let's say that it's $397 a month if they do it at gold belt versus doing it while they're still a white belt. And so now what it gives you the opportunity to do is have, aggregate $50 a month times 5 years, more or less, so 60 times 5, 350, 15,000. Is that right? No. It's got to be more. Well, we're doing 48 plus 30, so 78 months. 78 months times 50, 4,000, okay? So there's a 4,000 savings from here to here, but we're not going to talk about that. There's a $10,000 savings from here to here, and we're going to talk about that in round numbers.
And that's the blitz when the blitz happens?
Well, this is on an ongoing basis, right?
I'm talking about when we start with the blitz.
No, I know, but we'll go back to that for a second, okay? So, but just to get in the principle, right? So now I've got the deadline is you're receiving your gold belt, right? So that's the drop dead deadline to get the savings. And what, from beginning to end, I've always thought about it this way. I kind of have a renewal cycle that's this first 8 lessons. And then I have a second renewal cycle that's the second 8 lessons. And I want to have at least half of everybody who enrolls renewed by the time they get to their gold belt. Okay? Then, once they get their gold belt, I have the third renewal cycle that's having a gold belt to get them renewed by the time they get their orange belt. And in our context, this is more or less 2 months, right? Because they're already starting at different times, so it might be 2.5 months. It might be, might be at the tip of 3 or something. And this is 2 months. So more or less within that first 4 months, I want to have 75% or more. And again, like the Sterling School's numbers was 90%. I've never seen anybody beat that number, right? So that's an outlier at the top end. Okay, but that was always the target. Half of them here, and the half that's left here. And then there's 25% that haven't been renewed beyond. And I would guess, I don't have a good stat on this recently, but I would guess beyond that we may get the other 5%. And there's 20% that aren't going to do it and just going to drop out sooner or later. Okay? Does that make sense? So now you're doing the renewal blitz stuff, right? So you're going across, like raking across the entire student body. So now what I'm doing is this is the regular price. We're going to grandfather you in at this price. And it is grandfathering you in because you're a green belt, but we're giving you what the price is going to be for white belts, which is the lowest possible price, or you're a gold belt or a purple belt or whatever they are, right? And so we're grandfathering in everybody at this price, right? Now, we're doing the 6-week or 7-week thing. So this is the deadline, what do we say, April 1st. Okay, so now when you've done the blitz and you go through, I'm not telling them this is what's happening, but then what I'm going to do is treat them all like they just moved into that gold belt level, right? So now for the next 2 months is I can cycle back through and I can do this next bump up again in comparison here. Now I can't cycle back through and still offer them the old number because I've lost credibility, right? The only way I can do that is, April 2nd, 3rd, 4th, I'm so sorry, Carol, we didn't really get a chance to sit down and finalize. That's my fault, I was so busy. If we can go ahead and get it finalized by Friday, I can go ahead and offer that to you. I mean, I can do that for a few days with credibility, but after that, I've lost all credibility and deadlines don't mean anything anymore, right? So that's the way you can go at it, again, with credibility and with an incentive. Now, if you do the blitz adequately, you can get maybe 70% of them renewed here. And then you pick up a few of them here. Does that make sense? Right? And I was always telling my guys, you know, worst case scenario, we're going to get half. Best case scenario, we're probably going to get 75%. And occasionally somebody's an outlier, like the 90% number, right? But vast majority of those will happen here. Because now you're doing the mail to them 22 times, and email, and your posters, and the banners, and the black belt, and the picture of the black belt, and the autograph thing, and the special seminar, and you're doing all the stuff, right? Is you get it's like a grand opening, because now what happens is you get the bandwagon effect kicks in, right? And if you're doing some kind of special uniform, make sure you have a bunch of them, and you're handing them out, and you're applauding them, and you're celebrating them and everything, because as you get momentum, the numbers improve, right? So the hard part is the first week or two to get any damn body, but then as you start getting momentum, it builds and builds and builds on itself, right? But again, why you want to keep that deadline, you know, 6-ish weeks, because that momentum starts tapping out at week 7, 8, 9. And so if it's a 3-month thing, they've got too far in the future, they can push it off, right? The other thing that we've always done is try to make up an excuse for an intermediate deadline, right? So if this was, say, November 1st to Christmas, the intermediate deadline would be Thanksgiving. And so now there's something special that they get if they finalize by that time, right? And typically would be, you know, the blue uniform top, one thing or another is a, you know, $65 uniform, but we'll throw that in for free if you renew by this point, right?
So like maybe 3 weeks?
Yeah, exactly. And we have a special leadership-only seminar here with the grand boobah of something or other, or, you know, whatever, or I'm going to do a special thing. You know, among my schools, you know, around the 5 or 6 of them, we would schedule like a special seminar with me, either at each location or a combined thing. So if you're in the thing by here, you get to come to the special seminar with Master Oliver, and and it's so cool, and you get to learn, right? So we would do that. So again, that deadline was designed to create early momentum, because you want the bandwagon effect, right? And if you stall early on, then all of a sudden the numbers go to hell, right? And, you know, our staff, you know, we'd set the high goal, the middle goal, and the moron goal. The guys who hit the moron goal were the ones that didn't do anything, and then they got everybody scrambling at the last minute, right? And so now they'd have the biggest week the school had ever had, and the crappiest 6 weeks that anybody ever had, because they didn't get momentum, right? And like in the Christmas thing, we would do it where, you know, if you hit, you know, the middle goal, you get X amount of days off. You hit the high goal, you get from 2 days before Christmas to 2 days after New Year's off. And, you know, and by the way, if you hit this goal, we'll buy you a trip to the Caribbean cruise or something during the time off. And I gave away lots of Rolexes and stuff too. But what would happen is, you know, it was the standing, you know, the moron goals were, you know, you guys really don't want to be the only one, you know, hanging out, whistling Dixie and playing your guitar, strumming your guitar in the school while everybody else is out on the Caribbean cruise or out having fun over the holidays, do you? Right? You don't really want to be the only one who's struggling to buy Christmas presents while everybody else has thousands of extra dollars in bonuses and is out playing with the money over the, I mean, you know, pain, 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 pleasure, 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 anchored on both sides, right?
This will be a good time with refunds.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and that is something also you can do, is you can make a big round to, you know, all of the monthly billing to give them a discount if they want to pay it off. Again, don't misinterpret that as an incentive to cash everybody out and go spend the money.